3 words changed everything. Please hide me. That's what 8-year-old Emma whispered to a room full of leather-clad bikers at Murphy's garage on a rain-soaked Tuesday morning. Her clothes were torn, her lip was bleeding, and the terror in her eyes told a story that would shatter this small Montana town forever. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. But before I tell you what those bikers did next, I need to know where you're watching from. Drop your city and state in the comments right now. Because what happened in Millfield, Montana could happen anywhere. Your town, your neighborhood, your family. And by the end of this story, you're going to understand why sometimes the people society tells us to fear are exactly the ones we need most. Some towns are so small they don't appear on most maps. Millfield, Montana sits in the shadow of the vast Rockies, population 2,847, where the biggest excitement usually comes from Friday night football and the annual Harvest Festival. Main Street has one diner, one grocery store, and Murphy's Garage, a motorcycle repair shop that doubles as the unofficial headquarters for the Iron Wolves Motorcycle Club. Now, the Iron Wolves aren't what Hollywood would have you picture. They're not outlaws or criminals. They're veterans, mostly. Men who served their country, came home changed, and found brotherhood in the rumble of engines and the freedom of open roads. They fix bikes, organize charity rides, and show up when their community needs them, even though most of that community crosses the street when they see them coming. Leading the Iron Wolves is Jack "Tank" Morrison. At 58, Tank stands 6'4" and weighs 280 pounds of muscle and scars. His beard is more gray than black now, and his hands are permanently stained with motor oil. He served 3 tours in Afghanistan. As a combat engineer, came home to a wife who'd moved on and a son who barely knew him. The Iron Wolves became his family. Murphy's Garage became his sanctuary. Tommy Wrench Sullivan, Tank's right hand, lost his leg to an IED in Kandahar. The prosthetic doesn't slow him down much, but the nightmares do. He's the club's mechanic, can rebuild any engine, fix any problem, except the ones that live inside his head. He's gentle with broken things, bikes and people alike. Maria Steele Rodriguez joined after her brother was killed by a drunk driver. Army logistics specialist, served 2 tours in Iraq, came home to discover that justice doesn't always mean consequences. The drunk driver got 18 months. Her brother got a grave. She found the Iron Wolves because sometimes the family you choose fights harder for you than the one you're born into. These are the people Emma stumbled toward on the worst morning of her young life. These are the ones society warned her about. These are the ones who would prove that sometimes angels wear leather instead of wings. 8-year-old Emma Chin lived 6 blocks from Murphy's Garage in a yellow house, with white shutters and a garden her grandmother had planted before the cancer took her. Emma was being raised by her mother, Linda, a night shift nurse who worked doubles to keep them afloat, and her stepfather, Derek, who'd moved in 8 months ago with promises of stability and family. Derek seemed perfect at first. He helped with homework. He fixed things around the house. He made Linda smile in ways Emma hadn't seen since her real father died in a construction accident 3 years earlier. But Derek had secrets, dark ones, the kind that fester in silence until they explode into violence. It started small, comments about Emma being too loud or in the way. Then came the yelling, then the threats, then the promises that if Emma ever told anyone about their private conversations, something terrible would happen to her mother. Linda worked nights and slept days. She was exhausted, overwhelmed, trying to build a life for herself and her daughter. She didn't see the way Derek looked at Emma when she wasn't around. She didn't notice how quiet her normally chattery daughter had become. She didn't know that Emma had started sleeping with her bedroom door barricaded. Emma tried to tell her teacher, Mrs. Patterson, but the words wouldn't come. How do you explain that the man your mother loves makes you feel afraid in your own home? How do you describe the way he stands too close, speaks too softly, touches too long? The town loved Derek. He coached Little League. He volunteered at church functions. He had a steady job at the lumber mill and treated Linda like a queen in public. Who would believe an 8-year-old girl over a man everyone respected? Tuesday morning, October 15th, Linda was at the hospital finishing a double shift. Emma was supposed to be getting ready for school. But Derek was home, drunk from the night before, angry about something at work, looking for someone to blame. The fight started because Emma had left her backpack by the front door instead of hanging it in the closet. Such a small thing. But Derek's rage was never really about the small things. "You're just like your worthless father," he snarled, grabbing her arm hard enough to bruise. "Useless. Stupid. Do you know what happens to stupid little girls who can't follow simple rules?" Emma tried to run. Derek caught her. What happened next in that yellow house with white shutters would haunt Emma's dreams for years to come. But it would also teach her something crucial. Sometimes the only way to survive is to fight back with everything you have. The slap came so hard it knocked Emma to the kitchen floor. Her lips split against her teeth, filling her mouth with a metallic taste of blood. Derek stood over her, his face twisted with a rage that had nothing to do with backpacks or rules, and everything to do with the kind of evil that festers in weak men who hurt children. "Get up," he hissed. "We're not done." Emma scrambled backward, her small hands slipping on the linoleum. This wasn't just anger anymore. This was something darker, more dangerous. The look in Derek's eyes made her stomach twist with a fear she'd never felt before. "Please," she whispered. "I'm sorry. I'll put my backpack away. I'll be good." But Derek wasn't listening. He was beyond reason now, beyond the careful mask he wore in public. The monster he'd kept hidden was finally free, and Emma was alone with it. She ran, burst through the back door in her pajamas and bare feet, Derek's voice roaring behind her. "Come back here. You can't run from me. I'll find you. And when your mother comes home, I'll tell her what a lying little brat you are." Emma ran through the backyard, over the fence, down the alley. Her feet were already bleeding from the gravel. But she didn't stop, couldn't stop, because Derek was behind her. And if he caught her this time, she knew something terrible would happen, something that couldn't be undone. The October morning was cold and wet, drizzle turning to rain. Emma's pajamas were soaked through in minutes. She had no shoes, no coat, no plan beyond putting as much distance as possible between herself and the yellow house that had become a prison. She ran for 12 blocks before exhaustion caught up with her. Her lungs burned, her feet were cut and bleeding. The rain had plastered her dark hair to her skull, and she was shaking so hard she could barely stand. That's when she saw Murphy's garage. The bay doors were open. She could see motorcycles inside, big gleaming machines that looked like mechanical dragons. And she could see men in leather vests working on them, their voices rumbling like distant thunder. Everything her mother had ever taught her said these were dangerous people. Everything society had programmed into her 8-year-old brain screamed that bikers meant trouble, meant violence, meant stay away. But Emma was already drowning in violence, already trapped with a monster. And sometimes, when you're 8 years old and bleeding and terrified, dangerous becomes relative. She stumbled into Murphy's garage, like a ghost materializing from the rain. Wet, shaking, blood on her lip, terror in her eyes. The 3 men working inside stopped mid-conversation and stared. Tank was the first to move. This mountain of a man with scarred knuckles and prison tattoos took one look at this broken child, and every protective instinct earned in 3 tours of combat kicked in at once. "Jesus," he breathed, kneeling down so he wasn't towering over her. "Hey there, sweetheart. What happened to you?" Emma opened her mouth, tried to speak, couldn't. The words were stuck behind tears and trauma and the fear that no one would believe her. But then she looked into Tank's eyes, brown and weathered and infinitely gentle, and something inside her broke open. "Please hide me," she whispered. 3 words. Simple, desperate, powerful enough to change everything. Tank's jaw clenched. Wrench set down his tools. Steele stood up slowly from the bike she was working on. And in that moment, 3 people who society called dangerous made a silent pact to protect a child who had nowhere else to turn. "Who hurt you?" Tank asked quietly. "My stepfather." Emma managed through chattering teeth. "Derek. He's coming. He's looking for me. Please don't let him find me." Tank glanced at Wrench and Steele. No words were needed. They'd all seen combat. They all recognized a war zone survivor when they saw one. This little girl had been in battle, and she'd barely escaped with her life. "Nobody's gonna hurt you here," Tank said firmly. "Nobody. You understand me? You're safe now." But even as he said it, Tank knew that safety was temporary. Derek would come looking. The police would get involved. Social services would ask questions. And an 8-year-old girl's word against a respected member of the community wouldn't be enough. They needed a plan. They needed evidence. And they needed to move fast. Because predators like Derek don't just give up when their prey escapes. Tank stood slowly, his massive frame unfolding like a mountain rising from the earth. He pulled his phone from his pocket with hands that had diffused bombs in Afghanistan and now trembled slightly with barely controlled rage. "Steele," he said quietly, never taking his eyes off Emma. "Get some blankets from the office. And see if there's any of that hot chocolate left from this morning. Wrench, lock the bay doors. Now." The two bikers moved without question. In the Iron Wolves, Tank's word was law, but more than that, they understood the situation instinctively. A child had sought sanctuary. Everything else could wait. Tank speed dialed a number. "Doc, it's Tank. I need you at the garage. Now. Emergency involving a kid." "No, can't wait. Doc, just come. And bring your medical bag." Dr. Elizabeth Harrington had been the Iron Wolves' unofficial medic for 3 years. A retired Army surgeon who'd patched up more soldiers than she could count. She now ran a small practice in Millfield and owed the bikers more favors than she could repay. They'd helped her when her ex-husband got violent. Now she'd help them. Steele returned with blankets and wrapped Emma gently, like she was handling broken glass. "What's your name, sweetheart?" "Emma," came the whispered response. "Emma, I'm Maria, but everyone calls me Steele. That big guy is Tank, and the one with the beard is Wrench. We're gonna take care of you, okay? Nobody's gonna hurt you while we're here." Emma nodded, clutching the blankets. For the first time in months, she felt something resembling safety. Tank made his second call. "Sheriff Morrison?" "Tank Morrison, at the garage." "Yeah, it's business, but not club business. I've got a situation here involving a child who's been hurt." "No, sir, we haven't touched her. She came to us for help." "Sheriff, you need to get down here. Now." Sheriff Dale Morrison was Tank's younger brother, though their relationship had been strained for years. Dale wore a badge. Tank wore leather. Dale believed in the system. Tank believed in justice. But when it came to protecting children, their differences disappeared. The bay doors rattled. Someone pounding hard enough to shake the metal. "Emma! Emma! Get out here right now." Derek's voice cut through the garage like a blade. Emma shrank deeper into the blankets, her whole body trembling. Tank's expression went dark. Wrench moved to the window and peered out through the blinds. White male, maybe 35, average height, drunk as a skunk and madder than hell, Wrench reported. "Looks like he's been up all night." Tank walked to the bay doors, his boots heavy on the concrete. "Sir, you need to step away from this building." "Open this door," Derek screamed. "I know she's in there. That little brat belongs to me." "No," Tank said through the metal, his voice carrying the authority of someone accustomed to command. "She doesn't belong to anyone, and you need to leave. Now. You can't keep her from me. I'm her father." "You're not her father," Tank replied coldly. "And if you don't leave this property in the next 60 seconds, I'm calling the police." Derek's laughter was ugly, alcohol-soaked, and cruel. "You think anyone's gonna believe a bunch of bikers over me? I'm a pillar of this community. I coach Little League. You're nothing but criminals and thugs." Inside the garage, Emma flinched at Derek's voice. Steele knelt beside her, her own face hard as granite. "Emma, honey, I need you to listen to me," Steele said softly. "See this phone? I'm recording everything that man is saying out there. Every threat, every word. This is evidence, okay? This is proof of what he's really like." Tank's phone buzzed. "Dr. Harrington arriving." Then another vehicle. Sheriff Morrison's patrol car. Through the window, Wrench watched the confrontation unfold. Derek screaming at the sheriff, gesticulating wildly. Dale Morrison listening, taking notes, his expression growing darker by the minute. Tank opened the door when his brother knocked. Dale stepped inside, took one look at Emma, huddled in blankets, and his jaw set like concrete. "Tell me what happened," Dale said. Emma's story came out in fragments. Whispered words about Derek's anger, about being afraid to sleep, about this morning's attack. Dr. Harrington arrived midway through and quietly began documenting Emma's injuries, the split lip, the bruises on her arms, the cuts on her feet. "I need to take pictures, Doctor," Harrington said gently. "For evidence. Is that okay, Emma?" Emma nodded. She understood that pictures meant proof. Proof meant people might believe her. Outside, Derek was still ranting. But his story was changing, becoming more elaborate, more desperate. First, Emma had run away for no reason. Then she'd fallen down the stairs. Then she'd been acting out because her mother worked too much. Sheriff Morrison listened to it all, taking notes, saying little. When he came back inside, his expression was grim. "I'm placing Derek Collins under arrest for child abuse," he announced. "Emma, you're going to need to give a formal statement, but not today. Today, you just rest." But where? Emma couldn't go home. Linda was still at the hospital, unaware that her world had just collapsed. And the system that was supposed to protect children moved slowly, bureaucratically, often failing the very people it claimed to serve. Tank made a decision that would change everything. "She stays with us," he said. "Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time. So if you're enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us." Now, back to the story. Sheriff Morrison frowned. "Tank, you know that's not how it works. She'll need to go into protective custody until social services can." "Dale," Tank interrupted, using his brother's name for the first time in years. "Look at her. Really look at her. She's terrified. She ran to us because she trusted us to keep her safe. You gonna break that trust by handing her over to strangers?" The sheriff looked at Emma, small and broken in her blankets, surrounded by bikers who were treating her like precious cargo. 48 hours, Dale said finally, "until we can sort this mess out properly." "But Tank, if anything happens to her, nothing will happen to her," Tank said with absolute conviction. "I give you my word." Outside, Derek was loaded into the back of a patrol car, still screaming about his rights, about how this was all a misunderstanding, about how bikers couldn't be trusted with children. Inside Murphy's garage, three of the most dangerous-looking people in Millfield were making hot chocolate and finding cartoon channels on an old television, turning their sanctuary into a temporary home for a little girl who had nowhere else to go. That first night, Emma couldn't sleep. Every sound made her jump. Every creak of the old building sent her scrambling deeper into the makeshift bed Tank had created in the office. Steele sat with her, reading stories from a book someone had found in the garage's lost and found box. "I'm scared," Emma whispered around midnight. "I know, baby girl," Steele replied. "But you're safe now. Tank's sleeping right outside that door, and Wrench is on the couch in the waiting room. Nobody's getting past them." Tank had indeed positioned himself like a guard dog. All 280 pounds of him stretched across the garage floor, listening to every sound, ready to react to any threat. He hadn't slept properly in years anyway. Nightmares from Afghanistan saw to that. But protecting Emma gave his insomnia purpose. The next morning brought news. Linda had returned from her shift to find police cars in her driveway and her daughter missing. Sheriff Morrison had to explain that her boyfriend was in jail, and her little girl was traumatized but safe. Linda arrived at Murphy's garage, looking like her world had ended. Which, in many ways, it had. "I didn't know," she kept saying through tears. "I swear I didn't know. If I had known, I would have. You would have protected her," Tank said gently. "Like any good mother would. This isn't your fault." But Linda couldn't stop blaming herself. The signs had been there. Emma's quietness, her reluctance to be alone with Derek, the way she flinched when he raised his voice. How had she missed it? How had she failed her daughter so completely? Emma ran to her mother, and they held each other in the middle of Murphy's garage, while three bikers pretended not to see their tears. Over the next 2 days, something remarkable happened. The Iron Wolves, these men and women who'd been rejected by polite society, created a family for Emma and Linda. They cooked meals on a hot plate in the office. They found children's movies to watch on an old television. They played cards and told stories and made sure Emma laughed, really laughed for the first time in months. Wrench taught Emma how motorcycle engines worked, his gentle hands guiding her small fingers over harmless components. See this here? That's the heart of the machine. Treat it with respect, and it'll take you anywhere you want to go. Steele braided Emma's hair and painted her nails. Activities that seemed incongruous in a motorcycle garage, but somehow perfect. You know what I learned in the Army? Steele said as she worked. The strongest people are the ones who protect others. You did that, Emma. You protected yourself, and probably other kids too, by being brave enough to tell the truth. Tank became Emma's shadow, her protector, her proof that size and strength could be used to shield rather than harm. He was everything Derek wasn't. Gentle despite his power, patient despite his past, protective without being possessive. On the second night, Emma asked Tank a question that broke his heart and mended it at the same time. Will you be my dad? Tank knelt down to her level, his weathered face soft with emotion. Emma, sweetheart, your real dad. He's watching over you from heaven. I can't replace him, but I can promise you something. I can promise that as long as I'm breathing, nobody will ever hurt you again. The legal proceedings moved faster than anyone expected. Derek's arrest had opened floodgates. 2 other children came forward with their own stories. The Little League parents he'd coached started remembering uncomfortable moments they'd dismissed. The mask was off, and what lay underneath was uglier than anyone had imagined. Derek took a plea deal to avoid trial. 15 years in state prison. Emma wouldn't have to testify, wouldn't have to relive her trauma in a courtroom. Justice was served with mercy for the victim. But the real transformation was happening in Murphy's garage. The Iron Wolves had found their purpose beyond themselves. They'd always been protectors in theory. Now they were protectors in practice. Word spread through Millfield. Not gossip or rumor, but truth. The bikers everyone had feared had saved a little girl. They provided sanctuary when the system failed. They believed a child when adults had doubted. The first visitor came on the 3rd day. Mrs. Patterson, Emma's teacher, with flowers and tears and apologies for not recognizing the signs. Then came neighbors, church ladies with casseroles, Little League parents with gratitude and shame. The people of Millfield were learning what Emma had discovered in her darkest moment. Sometimes the people who look dangerous are the ones who will fight hardest to keep you safe. 1 month later, Murphy's garage looked different. The workbench still held motorcycle parts and tools, but now it also had coloring books and crayons. The walls still displayed motorcycle posters, but they shared space with Emma's artwork. The radio still played classic rock, but it was turned down when Emma did homework at the desk. Tank had built for her in the corner. Linda had moved out of the yellow house. Too many bad memories. She and Emma now lived in a small apartment above Miller's Bakery, close enough to Murphy's garage that Emma could walk there after school. Close enough that Tank could keep his promise to protect her. The Iron Wolves had officially become Emma's extended family. Steele taught her self-defense, not because she expected trouble, but because confidence came from knowing you could handle whatever life threw at you. Wrench showed her how to fix things that were broken, a skill that applied to more than just motorcycles. Tank simply loved her with the fierce protectiveness of someone who'd found redemption in an 8-year-old girl's trust. But Emma's rescue had ripple effects that spread far beyond Murphy's garage. The Iron Wolves Motorcycle Club formally partnered with Millfield Elementary School to teach safety awareness, not stranger danger, that outdated concept that made children afraid of everyone. But real safety, how to recognize inappropriate behavior, how to tell when an adult was making them uncomfortable, how to find help when the system failed them. Principal Martinez, who'd initially been skeptical about bikers in her school, became their biggest advocate after seeing how children responded to them. These men and women have lived through trauma, she explained to concerned parents. They recognize it in others. They know how to help because they've needed help themselves. The program expanded beyond Millfield. Other schools across Montana invited the Iron Wolves to speak. Other motorcycle clubs started similar initiatives. What began with one little girl's desperate plea for help became a movement that protected countless children. Sheriff Morrison watched his brother transform from a man angry at the world to someone with purpose beyond himself. The tension between them evaporated, replaced by mutual respect and a shared mission. Dale started recommending the Iron Wolves to other agencies dealing with traumatized children. Sometimes, he told a conference of law enforcement officers, the badge isn't enough. Sometimes kids need to see that strength can be gentle, that scary-looking people can be trustworthy. My brother and his club taught me that. Dr. Harrington established a trauma clinic specifically for children, funded partly by motorcycle clubs across the region. The Iron Wolves charity rides raised money for counseling services, safe houses, and legal advocacy for young victims. The yellow house with white shutters was eventually sold. A new family moved in with small children who would grow up safe and loved. Linda kept her grandmother's garden alive in containers on her apartment balcony. Emma helped water the flowers every morning before school, a ritual that connected her to happier memories while building new ones. Derek served his sentence in a prison 3 states away. He would occasionally write letters, to Linda, to the court, to anyone who would listen, proclaiming his innocence and claiming he'd been railroaded by bikers and a hysterical child. The letters went unanswered and eventually stopped coming. Emma thrived. Her grades improved. She made friends. She smiled often and laughed easily. The trauma didn't disappear. Dr. Harrington explained that it never completely would, but it lost its power to control her life. On the one-year anniversary of that rainy Tuesday morning, Millfield held a community celebration they called Guardian Angel Day. It wasn't officially about Emma or the Iron Wolves, but everyone knew. The whole town gathered in Memorial Park for food, music, and recognition of people who protected others. Tank was asked to speak. He stood before a crowd that once crossed the street to avoid him, holding a microphone in hands that shook slightly with nervousness. A year ago, he began, his gravelly voice carrying, across the park. A little girl taught me something about courage. She showed me that being brave isn't about not being scared. It's about doing what's right even when you're terrified. She showed me that family isn't always about blood. Sometimes it's about choice. Sometimes it's about showing up when someone needs you most. He paused, looking out at the faces in the crowd. Neighbors who'd learned to see past appearances. Parents who'd taught their children that help comes in many forms. Children who now knew that scary-looking didn't always mean dangerous. Emma gave us a gift that day. She trusted us when she had no reason to. She believed in us when nobody else would. And in return, we found our purpose. We found our family. We found ourselves. Emma stood with Linda and the other Iron Wolves, wearing a child-sized leather vest with patches that read, Honorary Iron Wolf and Guardian Angel. She was 10 years old now, confident and strong, with Tank's gentle strength and Steele's fierce determination. When Tank finished speaking, the crowd erupted in applause. Not polite, obligatory applause, but the kind that comes from hearts that have been changed. Children ran to the Iron Wolves for autographs and hugs. Parents thanked them for teaching their kids about real strength and genuine protection. That evening, as cleanup began and families headed home, Emma sat on Tank's motorcycle in the empty garage, wearing his leather jacket that swallowed her small frame. Tank, she said quietly. Yeah, kiddo? Do you remember what you promised me that first day? Tank smiled, remembering that as long as I was breathing, nobody would ever hurt you again. Emma nodded seriously. And do you remember what I promised you? Tank frowned slightly. You never promised me anything, sweetheart. Yes, I did, Emma said firmly. I promised I would never forget that you saved me. And I promised that someday, when I'm big enough, I'll help save someone else too. Tank felt his throat tighten with emotion. You already are, Emma. Every day you show people that survivors can thrive, that broken things can be fixed, that trust can be rebuilt. You're already saving others just by being yourself. Emma leaned against his massive chest, small and safe in the circle of his arms. Outside, Millfield settled into evening quiet. Inside Murphy's garage, a little girl who'd once whispered, "Please hide me," had found something better than hiding. She found a family who would never let her go. She found protectors who proved that angels wear leather. She found her voice and the courage to use it. And most importantly, She'd found the truth that would guide her for the rest of her life. Real strength isn't about who you can hurt. It's about who you choose to protect. 3 years have passed since that rainy Tuesday morning when Emma stumbled into Murphy's garage. She's 11 now, confident and strong, with a smile that lights up rooms and a voice that carries the weight of someone who survived darkness and chosen to live in the light. The Iron Wolves Motorcycle Club has protected 14 children since Emma. 14 kids who found courage to speak up because they knew someone would listen. 14 families who discovered that help sometimes comes from unexpected places. Emma speaks at their charity events now, standing tall before crowds of adults who listen with a respect reserved for those who've earned wisdom through suffering. 3 words changed my life, she tells them, her voice clear and strong. Please hide me. That's what I said to people everyone told me were dangerous. But they weren't dangerous to me. They were dangerous to anyone who might hurt me. And there's a difference. She pauses, looking out at faces that have learned to see past surface appearances. The people who saved me didn't look like heroes. They looked like the kind of people you might cross the street to avoid. But they taught me something important. You can't judge protection by how it's packaged. Sometimes the gentlest hearts were the toughest exteriors. Sometimes the safest place is with people who look scary, but choose to use their strength to protect instead of harm. Tank still lives above Murphy's garage. Still fixes motorcycles and mentors at-risk youth. Still serves as Emma's chosen father with Linda's blessing and the law's recognition. The adoption papers hang framed next to Emma's school pictures and artwork. Steele opened a women's shelter funded by motorcycle clubs across 3 states. She teaches self-defense and helps women escape dangerous situations. Her leather vest now carries patches that read Guardian and Protector alongside the traditional club insignia. Wrench runs a program that teaches mechanical skills to kids who've aged out of foster care. He knows what it's like to feel broken, to believe you can't be fixed. He shows them that anything can be rebuilt with patience, skill, and the right tools. Sheriff Morrison and his brother Tank work together now on child protection initiatives. The badge and the leather vest side by side, proving that protection comes in many forms and that justice is stronger when different kinds of people work toward the same goal. Linda finished nursing school and now works in the trauma unit at Children's Hospital in Billings. She specializes in helping young patients who've experienced abuse. Emma's story gives her credibility with children who need to believe that survival is possible, that healing is real. Dr. Harrington's clinic has expanded to serve 6 counties. The Iron Wolves charity rides have raised over $2 million for childhood trauma services. What began with one desperate child has become a network of protection that spans the region. But perhaps the most important change is in the hearts and minds of Millfield itself. Children here grow up knowing that help can come from any direction. Parents teach their kids to judge people by their actions, not their appearance. And everyone understands that protecting children is a community responsibility, not something you leave to someone else. Emma's story spread beyond Montana. News outlets covered it. Documentary crews came to film. But the real impact happened one conversation at a time, one changed mind at a time, one protected child at a time. If you believe that children deserve protection from anyone strong enough to provide it, hit that subscribe button. Because stories like Emma's matter. They change how we see each other. They challenge our assumptions. They remind us that heroes don't always look like we expect. Drop a comment saying, "I choose to protect," if you're willing to be the adult a child can trust. Because somewhere, right now, a kid is hoping someone will notice their fear, believe their story, and stand between them and danger. Share this video with parents, teachers, coaches, anyone who works with children. Share it with people who judge others by appearance. Share it with anyone who needs to remember that real strength is measured by who you protect, not who you can intimidate. And remember Emma's lesson: 3 words can change everything. Please help me are words that should never be ignored, no matter who speaks them, no matter who hears them. Because sometimes the people society tells us to fear are exactly the ones we need most. Sometimes angels wear leather instead of wings. And sometimes a little girl's desperate plea for help can transform an entire community's understanding of what protection really means. Thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next story. Every Tuesday morning, Emma walks to school past Murphy's garage. She waves to whoever's working inside, usually tank or steel or wrench. They wave back, their leather-clad forms bent over motorcycles that gleam like metal promises. She's not the scared little girl who stumbled in from the rain anymore. She's a survivor, a fighter, a living reminder that courage is contagious, and that protection comes in forms you might not expect. And if you listen carefully as she walks by, humming songs and planning her day, you might hear her whisper 3 different words to herself. Words that have become her daily affirmation. Her promise to the world, her gift to anyone who needs to hear them. I am safe. 3 words that changed everything. Just like she knew they would. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.